There we go. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. This is Recovery Mode, Push Bound and Consulting, joined by our friend, Chapter 12 contributor, Erik Francis, coming from our wonderful state of Arizona. So definitely. And how warm is it out there, Mr. Francis? How warm is it out there, Erik?
Oh, it's over 100 degrees here. It's about 105, 110. It's not so wonderful now. We're still the hot zone with this whole thing. And, but it's a dry heat, like we always like to tell everybody.
No, and that's the thing. My wife is from Arizona.
Oh, really?
And she's from the Tucson area, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she always makes reference to, it's a dry heat. Is it truly? Because I know you've been to Chicago before. We've talked in Chicago face to face. Humidity and stuff is that a real thing when it comes to Arizona versus Chicago?
I would take dry heat over humidity anytime because, it's a difference between going in a sauna versus going in a steam room. The big thing is that, you go out. What happens is that you don't go outside after 10 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you stay inside till about 5 o'clock. When you think about it, you being in Chicago and you guys have the blizzards, at least you look out the window and you say, hey, it doesn't look like it's a nice day out there. It looks like it's snowing, it's a snowstorm. I look out my window right now. It looks gorgeous. Then I go outside and all of a sudden, you just feel the heat and, you just spend the time in, the pool if you got one. I'm kind of, a little bit crazy in what I do with it is that through this pandemic, I've turned my gym into a garage. I call it Francis Fitness. It's where I put my weights and my boxing stuff. And I'll go out there and work out with a fan about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's like working out in the sauna. I mean, is it doable? Yeah. Do you get used to it? Yeah. But it's not as bad as everybody says it is. I like it better than Florida when I go to the humidity places, or especially in the big city, because in a big city, when you work and you're often dressed up, you're dressed up in your shirt and your tie and your slacks and everything, and that's easier actually at a drier heat than it is in a humidity because when it's humidity, you get soaking wet. I mean, you're sweating right through your stuff. I mean, here it's just like, okay, this just feels heavy on me right now, but I can roll up my sleeves, I can unbutton my button, so. But also, the benefit of doing what I'm doing now, being remote, is that my PDs are pretty much just like deciding, okay, what pair of shorts am I going to wear today? And yes, I do wear shorts when I'm dressed right now. I mean, I'm not doing that whole thing where, people are like showing up in their stuff. And it's funny because you kind of change your approaches as well because, I mean, I could come on wear, one of my t-shirts, but, being professional, I try to put on a nice shirt and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a little bit of a little bit of the behavior you still have to have when you're doing online stuff.
Definitely. So Erik is our Chapter 12 contributor. Basically, just to give you guys an idea, as always, this is why we're here. Recovery Mode is the 158-page book that we've all contributed to of all the guests on the Recovery Mode podcast so far, up to Chapter 12, The Joy of Rigorous Learning. Definitely, this is something at pushboundconsulting.com. Please go there, download it, pass it on to a friend, pass it on to another educator. This is actually for everyone. This is not just for educators and administrators. These are for anyone who has a child in school, anyone who's passionate about education. Definitely, this is the questions. We don't have all the answers, but we want to start asking the right questions about what we're going to be looking at through this unexpected and rapid change in our educational system, disrupting the status quo a little bit, going into recovery mode, and what school is going to look like. And definitely for all your administrators and everyone out there, we have a whole team of professional development experts. So definitely, if you guys are interested in putting together any type of professional development to reintegrate your school back into what we're going to look like in a few weeks, please contact us anytime, pushboundconsulting.com, through our Facebook page. And we'll be more than happy to talk with you and contact with you and, and gather information from you so we can make sure you are taken care of during this time. So, Mr. Francis, I know you, but I don't know if everyone else knows you. Who is Erik Francis? Who is this? Who are you, sir?
Who is Erik Francis?
Yeah, who is Erik Francis with the evil eye?
No, it's my Dwayne Johnson. It's my. If you smell what Rick is cooking. No, Erik.
Exactly.
Anyway, I've been an educator for over 20 years. Did not start out to be an educator. This is actually was the second career. I actually started out to work in the film industry, which I did. And then I left that and to become a teacher. So what does that say about the film industry? Actually, I actually made more money as a teacher here in Arizona, which is one of the lowest paying states in the nation. I made more money as a teacher than I did working in the film industry. I was an assistant to a producer on big studio lots. So I became an educator. I taught middle school and high school. I started my career in a small migrant farming community on the Arizona-California border called Blythe, California. That's where I learned how to work with students of all different populations and personalities. I taught English and I also taught math, because in California, if you don't have the numbers at your school, last hired, first fired. Well, I was the last hired, and they said, Eric, if you want to stay, I have to teach your math class. So I taught this math class in middle school, even though I wasn't a math teacher. And one of my math classes was mainstream grade level, and the other class was all English language learners. So now not only am I teaching out of a content area that is not mine, I'm also teaching kids who were limited proficient English. So that was a great experience because it really taught me like the value of questioning, which is kind of what my wheelhouse is what you want to call it, where I used to ask the kids, a question and they would respond to me and they have to respond in English in complete sentences, or they would ask me a question using interrogative sentences. So that's kind of where that started. And then I came back to Phoenix and I worked middle school here, and then I worked at a high school. I became a site administrator. That was a very short time. I realized that was not what I wanted to do with my education career path, even though I had it all planned out. I realized I was more of the police officer my NYPD grandfathers always wanted me to be. I just didn't have a badge or a gun or the ability to arrest people, because I used to use their interrogation techniques to find out who skipped fourth hour. By the way, if the tips of your ears turn red, you're lying. If you roll your eyes to the left, you're lying. And if you go, no, yeah, you're guilty. For
all the educators and administrators who have to interrogate, where were you fifth hour? There's Erik Francis' top 3 tips of telling, the lie detecting.
Well, you also got to do the Batman Clint Eastwood voice, because, and again, using question with that, I would say, okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First thing you got to ask yourself is, what do I already know? You want to play bluff? You feel lucky? So then after that, I worked for a state education agency out here in Arizona, the Arizona Department of Education. That's where I really learned about policy and law. And I ended up having a great boss, a great supervisor in the Department of Education when I worked for Title I. Her name was Nancy Conitzer. And what made her great as a leader is that she recognized your strengths and skills and encouraged you to really go forward and really, really expand, extend on it. And, and it's not only that she makes her look good because you're doing good work, but it's making you look good. And she basically groomed people to live to their levels of, proficiency and levels of expertise and capabilities. So in 2012, I decided to take the risk and become what we call an educational consultant. I don't like that word because I like to call it educational professional specialist, because I have expertise. I know a lot, but I don't know it all. So I started out doing Title I consulting, helping schools set up their plans and their programs. And then it shifted more to professional development. And that's where I, used a lot of the questioning techniques I came up with when I was a teacher. And also I really, really glommed onto this concept of depth of knowledge, especially Webb's depth of knowledge, when the Common Core standards got implemented, because we were communicated this thing about, the depth of knowledge is about what comes after the verb, yet here's this wheel, and the wheel is all full of verbs, and they're trying to do Jedi mind tricks on you, saying, it's about what comes after the verb, but this wheel has verbs. It's not about the verb. It's about what comes after the verb, but the wheel has verbs. So in the last 10 years, that really has become a passion of mine, is about teaching and learning for depth of knowledge. I've kind of extended it, and I talk about it in the book here, about how you can use Webb's DOK levels, not as a taxonomy. It's not a taxonomy, and it's not about the level of thinking you demonstrate. It's about the 4 different and deeper ways students can understand and use the knowledge they are learning in class. So, and that's going to be my next book. My first book was called Now That's a Good Question, How to Promote Cognitive Rigor Through Classroom Questioning, and that was published by ASCD. And my next book is going to be about understanding using Webb's depth of knowledge as a model for teaching and a method for teaching and learning and testing. And that's hopefully going to come out next year, God willing, with this pandemic, because everything's getting delayed.
Yeah, definitely. And then, and Austin, you segue right into what I wanted to talk about too is like with Webb's depth of knowledge, the first person I think of is you, because because I see you with Webb's depth of knowledge all over the place, all over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over everything. And do you think educators should concentrate, like you have the Common Core and then you have Webb's depth of knowledge? And me personally, when I made that switch over to integrate Webb's depth of knowledge into my classroom lesson planning and everything else, my life became very easy, because it's like I'm trying to frame the Common Core and push over, and then you have Webb's depth of knowledge. It's like, okay, there's more things I can work with. There's more things I could pick. I mean, what would you say to a teacher maybe during this time frame trying to put lessons together? I mean, would you point them to that, or would you just point them to just sticking with the Common Core and what they know?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for saying that when you think of DOK, you think of me. That's very flat.
You're all over the place. It's hard not to see you. It's like depth of knowledge is your face. That's it.
Well, you know, I like to call me DOK 3.0, and we got to respect the research. Norman Webb came up with depth of knowledge. Actually, it was never about instruction. It was about alignment studies. You used it to basically code your standards based upon its demand, and then you code your items and you compare it, and they're either fully aligned, acceptably aligned, or insufficiently aligned. And that was originally was developed for. And then when Karen Hess came out with it, she established, okay, this is basically the difference between Bloom's taxonomy, which we've used for the last 50, 60 years, and Webb's, and made that matrix. And really, it's a great tool for, you know, coding and doing it in a way that's familiar for people when it comes to teaching and learning. We have to respect the research. We have to respect what comes before us. And what I like to say is I'm DOK 3.0 because I use it as a method and model for teaching, based upon their research and based upon their work. So Karen Hess calls each DOK level a ceiling of assessment. And when you basically say that, and everything starts with the standards. It's not your curriculum. It's not the textbook. I mean, you have textbooks in there that'll say this is a DOK 2 or DOK 3. That's fine. But, you know, it starts with the standard. And that's why I say go with Webb's DOK levels, because you're going to look at that standard and you're going to code its demand, and it's going to be a DOK 1, 2, 3, or 4. And based on that, you start there. And I call that the DOK bar. That's the top of it. Because if you see my DOK levels, you see I organize them as blocks. And it's not a taxonomy. You start at the DOK level of the standard. Based upon whether the students can demonstrate their learning at that block, at the bar is what I call it, you tier it to where they are. Now, when I say tier it, there's two ways you can tier it. If my standard is a DOK 3, and they can't demonstrate their learning at the bar, which most likely they won't when you first introduce it, then you need to tier it to where they are. And I'm not saying down, because when you say up and down, now you're giving it a value judgment. You're tiering it to where they are. So can you do it at this level? No. Can you do it at this level? No. Can you do it at this level? Yes. That's where the gap is. That's where the foundation is. And you're doing it, you're being responsive to the student, because you're saying, here's the finish line. Think about a race, either car or runner. They know what the finish line is. You, as the teacher, you're the coach or you're the pit crew boss, and you're saying, what do you need to get to that finish line? Do you have this? No. Do you have this? No. Do you have this? Yes. Okay. So you're guiding them to that. Teaching and learning is always basically reducing the DOK level and deepening it, reducing it, deepening it, tiering it to where they are, bring them to the bar, tier it to where they are, bring it to the bar. Your students are always going to that level. And once they can demonstrate their learning at that level. And that's what the other tiering is. If the student can demonstrate their learning at that level, then it's our responsibility as teachers to provide them a good learning experience where they go beyond the bar. So that's where you do an extended. I like the DOK levels, and what I do with it is basically I describe 4 different ways you can engage with the content. So at a DOK 1, all you're doing is you're focusing on knowledge acquisition. You're focusing on the facts. You're focusing on developing and demonstrating and assessing foundational knowledge and functional understanding. The taglines I like to have for it is either just the facts or just do it. At a DOK 2, now it's not about so much the item you're answering. It's about that item being your example of how you can use that knowledge. So if I'm teaching math, it's not whether I can answer that question correctly. That's a DOK 1. I have to demonstrate and communicate how did I use that knowledge. So for example, let's do a simple thing. If I say, what is 2 + 2? And you say 4, that's a DOK 1. If I say to you, how can addition be used to find the sum of two numbers, such as 2 plus 2? Now I'm focusing on that. Do I have conceptual understanding? Because I look at items in a test or on a curriculum like pitches in baseball. You know, sometimes you're getting a good pitch and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're going to strike out. It all really depends on it. Do you have that conceptual and procedural understanding? That's that too. So notice the difference there. Can you answer that question correctly? Yes. Can you tell me why that's the answer or how you got that answer? That's a little more demanding. And who really struggles with that is our gifted kids, because they'll look at a complex problem and go 4, and they can't communicate to you. At a three, now you're giving them the answer. So if I said to you, how could addition and rounding be used to prove that 2 plus 2 could equal 5? Or how does the text address these ideas and themes? So I don't ever ask. The worst question we can ask is, what is the central idea or theme of the story? Because I can then say, do you want what I think, what you taught me, or what this book says? You know, I give it to them and they have to use evidentiary thinking. That's a 3. So if you notice, I gave you the answer there, 2 plus 2 equals 5. You have to tell me how you could use addition and rounding to prove that or invalidate it. And with a 4, it's not project-based learning all the time. It's not doing projects. It's not even about time. It's about the extent you can understand and use the knowledge. So now I've learned about this concept, this procedure, this content. Ask, what else can I do with that knowledge? You know, so how can I use it deep within the subject area? How can I make connections between what I'm learning, between different concepts in the subject area? How can I go across text and topics? So if I'm reading Gore Vidal's biography of Abraham Lincoln, I'm reading History.com's profile of Abraham Lincoln, and I'm reading Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, how do all 3 of those texts portray Abraham Lincoln? I'm going across the curriculum. This is where I'm using math in civics because I'm using statistics. This is where I'm using math in geometry because I'm doing measurement. This is where I'm doing my STEM. This is where I'm doing my genre studies. You know, I'm reading more than one science fiction book and saying, how's that the common theme motifs, author studies. I'm also going beyond the classroom. So that's what I try to do. And I'm trying to come up with something right now, because right now all the PD is focusing on is, how do I use a computer and what's this thing called the internet? I mean, that's basically what all the PD is. So we're really focusing on teachers, how to hold and use the instrument. And at some point we're going to have to basically say, okay, so now you know how to, where your hands go on a guitar. Now you know what the notes are. Now you got to go play Hotel California and Stairway to Heaven. And I'm hoping that what I can do with DOK is say, now you have this computer. So how do you use your resources available? So for example, the DOK1, I could ask the kids to go and acquire the information. I can ask them a question. I can say, what is the Pythagorean theorem? Okay, I want you guys to go search 5 sites, and I want you to report back to me in your own words, what's the Pythagorean theorem, and tell me what the credibility of sources are. Or I can say, what's the plot of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? And then DOK2, now I'm teaching them, and I'm asking that question, like, you know, how can the Pythagorean theorem be used to solve real mathematical real world problems? And again, now they're going again and researching it, and they're bringing it back to me. And a DOK3 is that, okay, I'm going to give you this scenario situation. Or I'll give you an argument. Here's 3 arguments to pick from. Now you're reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Who's more at fault for the students, for the children's behavior, the children or the parents? Is Willy Wonka eccentric, cruel, justified, or all the above? Is Willy Wonka Charlie Chocolate Factory a dark comedy or a satire, or children's story? And a 4 would be, now I want you to do something with it. You know, could you write the sequel to Willy Wonka? Can you write another story that's similar to it? Or how could you go out and tell me how you could use a Pythagorean theorem? Or, you know, you do those investigations. See, you have these devices now that allow us to go beyond the standards and beyond the curriculum. And you got to look at this, and teachers have to trust their talent with it. And I like to say with teachers is that we're artists. You know, we are artists. And I'm going to ask this: what paints the painting or builds the building for the artist or the carpenter? Is it the brush you're using and the hammer you're using, or is it you who's holding the brush and the hammer? I mean, that's what we need to do, is that you have all these tools here and everybody's getting introduced to all these different things. And, you got Google Classroom and Canvas and Flipgrid and all this stuff. And it becomes overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much. Be the artist, man. You just teach, and you got to trust your artistry as a teacher. If you don't know how to use the tools, that's one thing, but you are an artist as a teacher. So trust your talent, trust your instinct.
Definitely. And thank you for saying that, because I'd say that all the time. It's like each classroom and each lesson is like us painting like another picture for the students to look at or the students to learn from. And that 40 or 45-minute time block is one painting, and then the next day is another painting. And it's like you have a whole art museum of all the things you did all year for them to go through and to be able to look at and reflect upon. It's just awesome.
And that's part of the joy. If it's not joyful for you, it's not joyful for the kids. And it doesn't mean that it has to be fun. It's joy, as I wrote in the book, is not just about, a sense of happiness. It's a sense of accomplishment. Like, I can have joy like, oh my gosh, I got through that, or I can have joy like, wow, I finally got it correct. That's a part of joy as well. It's not like, yay, I'm learning about this, and yay, this is fun. No one's asking you to be Jim Henson when you're teaching, and you're expecting to come up there with a bunch of Muppets and teach the C is for cookie that's good enough for me. But you can bring that joy with it by getting the kids to think about stuff that they never really thought about. And that's what this whole thing allows. And you can do it where it's standards-based. You can do it where you can look at your standard and say, okay, well, you talk about Common Core, and I like to call them college and career ready because everyone says they're not doing Common Core, but I call them the Miss Piggy standards, actually, because Miss Piggy, you put blonde hair, blue eyes, and makeup and stuff on her, she's still a pig. That's kind of what the Common Core standards are. We now call them something else. But the big thing is that, you have that standard where it's Common Core standard number 7 that says compare how 2 different formats or 2 different mediums tell the same story. You could have a great lesson there, and this would be like DOK4, where I could say, okay, have you seen the Harry Potter movies? Yeah. Have you read the books? No. Okay, now go read. I want you to go read one of the Harry Potter books and one of the movies you saw. Now I want you to do a compare and contrast. And I can give you a good universal question because it's not as clear cut. Is it better to read the book or see the movie first, or vice versa? And that's actually not as clear cut as when you and I were growing up. It's now, some people say, you should see the movie because then you won't get disappointed if you read the book. Or some people have a hard time processing words, but if they see the movie, it's multi-sensory. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm actually doing that with my daughter right now. She's watching Twilight movies. And then she said to me the other day, I want to go read the book. And my daughter hates to read. And yeah, isn't that funny? I'm an educator. My daughter hates to read. So
shame on you, sir. Shame on you.
Here's the thing. My thing about text is that, hey, man, as long as you're thinking about the story you're being presented, that's fine. It's kind of like what we all are. It's multi-sensory these days. And we have to understand that it's not just print. It's also visual. It's audio. So we got the book Twilight, and I said, you've seen the movie now. Now you're going to read this book. I'm going to ask you this. Which did you like better, and how did what you saw in the movie influence what you read in the book? Because if you think about it this way, you and I don't know when you read Harry Potter, you will a generation will always see Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and Emma Watson as the 3 main characters. If you read it before the movies came out, it allowed you to do more creative thinking. You didn't see it. You didn't see those characters as those people as those characters. Yeah, definitely. Right. Now, whenever a kid reads The Hunger Games, they're always going to see Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, for gosh sakes, whenever you read an Iron Man comic, they even drew it to where it now even looks like he looks more like Robert Downey Jr. Captain America looks more like Chris Evans. So, and that's the thing that a lot of things we need to do with our kids, especially now with the devices, is that they're bombarded by so much information. They're bombarded by so many images. We need to teach them how to think critically and creatively about what it is that they're seeing. If you have struggling readers, there is no reason why you can't have a visual aid with it. What I used to do with my classes, I used to taught English language arts for English literature. I would buy the classic comics of the books we were reading, like Last of the Mohegans. And they're reading Last of the Mohegans. That's a tough book to read, especially for a reader. Yeah, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what's he saying there?" And then they look at the comic going, "Whoa, I didn't see that." Okay, well, how did you see it? Well, I saw it like that. See, and that's the whole thing. It's that it's okay to basically supplement, not supplant, not watch the movie instead of read the book, but supplement. And you get them to think critically if you, and this is a simple thing. I mean, this is what we can do with our devices here. It's like every book that the kids are reading has been turned into a movie. Okay. And most likely they've seen it. And you can now say, okay, now I want you to read the book. And your assignment is, which did you like better and why? Now I'm doing an argumentation. And then you're basically saying, how did the movie influence the way you read the book? Now you're doing more of an informative text. You're doing more of a critical analysis. Do you agree or disagree with the casting? Now that you read the book. I actually got this lesson because if you ever read the book Jaws by Peter Benchley, it's completely different than the movie. And that's why everyone keeps on saying, my gosh, they want to remake Jaws. I say, wow, I hope they do the book. And they go, what do you mean they do the book? Because the book's not even about a killer shark. It's about small town politics. And then when they describe Brody looks more like Alec Baldwin, big guy, husky guy than Roy Scheider, who was built more like a marathon runner. And the character of Hooper looks more like Brad Pitt or Zac Efron than they did Richard Dreyfuss. So, and the whole thing about is different. So do that with our kids. You see this and, you've seen this movie. Now here's the book. How did that influence your perspective? That's deep, man. That's deep. And you're still addressing the standards.
Definitely. And now when we look at the joy of rigorous learning, and you pretty much nailed most of the questions I was going to ask you. That's why I love interviews like this. You took my whole list and just ran with it.
I just like to talk. That's it.
No, that's not a problem whatsoever, man. That's why I'm learning, and I'm sure everyone else at home will be too. You have that one teacher that gets you after a professional development, and they find you and they go, Erik, your professional development was awesome, but I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so uncertain. I'm not as confident as I would like to be going into this fall opening season when it comes to what's going on right now. What would you tell that teacher? How would you maybe steer them in the right direction?
First, I tell them to breathe. Just breathe. Okay. And that everyone's in this, and you need to trust your instincts and skills. I know these tools can be overwhelming. You should be not so looking at what the resources you have, but that are out there, but how could you use those resources? And I think we're making it too complex for everybody. And I think we need to basically say, you need to trust the kids and you need to get feedback from them. You need to make it very, very student-centered. We call these kids digital natives. That means they are used to using the tools, but that doesn't mean they understand how to use the tools deeply. I mean, they're all making these TikTok videos right now, okay? So you can make that where they know how to do this, and that you can just kind of be creative with your teaching. I think the hardest part is that me telling them at one time, this is what you need to do, I don't know if that would work. These teachers need coaching and they need support. And when I say coaching and support, I don't say teach like me. You can't teach like me. You can't teach like you, because I'm me, you're you. What I can give you, I got a Peloton, and there's a great guy who's on there. He says, I don't give directions, I just offer suggestions. So, and that's what I would offer. I would look to see, how can I tap into my creativity? One of the things I talk about the DOK levels is I compare it to popular television shows. So at a DOK 1, I would say to that teacher, why don't you just run your class like a game show? Why don't you give the kids like a game show? There's all these templates out there you can do as a game show. You can do Jeopardy. That can be your check for understanding. It can be a formative assessment. You make it a competition. At a DOK 2, it's like being on a DIY show where now you're the producer and the student's the star. So if you and I are having this conversation here right now, if you were the teacher and you were to tell me, Erik, how does DOK a different way of looking at learning? I'm going to now have to produce this video and I'm going to have to show it to you and make it like a DIY show. So now I'm like Bob Ross explaining to you how I made my happy mountains and my happy trees. I'm like Rachel Ray saying, how did I cook that meal in 30 minutes or more? So it's a DIY show. Out of 3, you can give them a challenge, an investigation, have them go, give them a thing, go search it out. I mean, and again, it's with the questioning. And with a 4, it's really more that extended learning where basically what's the real world connection. I really think what teachers need is not just me coming in as, this PD person, one and done, put on a rock show. What I mean by rock show is that, for 2 hours, I'm going to entertain you with some great PowerPoint slides and some funny stuff and everything. They need coaching. They need support. They need to have a coach there who's not just so much like, this is how you use the technology, but this is how you can use your talent with these tools. And be creative together, be a sounding board. I'm going to be doing a lot of coaching with schools. And I told my schools that I am not there to tell you how to teach and what to do. I am there to kind of bring the best out of you. And that's what good coaching is. So we'll come up with stuff together. I will give you recommendations. I never give advice because advice, can bite you in the back end. Recommendations, you either take it or you don't, but I think that teacher is overwhelmed right now. I think they just need to breathe. And I think they need to tap into their creativity. And again, this is all my opinion and recommendations. I think you need to trust yourself. I think you need to take time to take care of yourself. Okay. You need to basically pace yourself. You also need to realize that the classroom environment is not the online environment. You are not restricted to 4 walls, and you're not even time bound. And you need to basically pace the time. One of the things I'm recommending teachers in schools to do is to deliver their instruction like an RTI or multi-tiered system of support, where you have 1 hour of either live or on-demand instruction. And we need to be sensitive to that because we don't know why the kids are not tuning in. They're either, tuning in or dropping in. And when they tune in, they're there live. If they're dropping in, they see it on demand. And that's what a lot of apps do. A lot of like sports apps do or athletic workout apps do. You either take the class live or you take it on demand and they log in. You then do a tier 2 small group and you schedule it. And again, if you schedule that time, you work with the student, and the tier 3 one-on-one is scheduled by the student and the parent. Now, this is the ideal. So you're not keeping these kids online all the time. Excuse me. You're not also forcing yourself to be online. You're pacing it. I'm sorry. Kids should not, and teachers should not be on more than an hour providing direct instruction. And that's something I even learned doing PDs. I've had people say, hey, I want you to do a 6-hour PD online. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, first I say, first of all, your teachers are going to tune me out. Secondly, I just can't do it because you're talking head for 6 hours. I mean, even 3 hours is pushing it, which is my limit now. I'll do a 3-hour and then hopefully do some breakout. You need to provide like a 1 hour of direct instruction guided practice. And then you schedule your small group throughout the day. Or you break it up. If you're high school, if you're departmentalized, think of this like extended block. Like on Monday, it's English language arts in the morning and maybe social studies in the afternoon. On Tuesday, it's math in the morning and science in the afternoon. And then, you're doing it where at least one day a week, you're getting at least one lesson. If you want to do your electives, you can make it elective Wednesday or extended learning Wednesday. Don't call it electives. Call it extended learning Wednesday. I'm sorry, that's my 80s. I'm an child of the 80s. Look at my company, Maverick Education, named after Top Gun. So look at it like, your extended learning Wednesday. That's when you do your math. That's when you do your not your math. You do your music, you do your art, and you incorporate into the lessons. And you need to make it extended learning, and you need to do check-ins, and you need to do checks for understanding, and just pace your time. This will allow us to really do deeper learning. It's a Band-Aid on an amputation right now, and we all have to understand that. But we can't just, bring our classroom and put it in this 4 little box right here, this little screen here. We need to be sensitive to the time. The one thing I also don't understand is why aren't we looking the way the colleges do it online? Because a lot of the colleges go online instruction and they don't expect students to show up to class every single day. They give them an assignment. They expect them to read the assignment. They expect them to complete the work and expect you as the teacher to make the contact, to provide office hours and everything like that. You know, a lot of this stuff is time is because our state departments and our laws say kids have to be in school this amount of time. Well, physically, yeah, but looking at a screen, nah, that's not the way it should work.
It's not going to be the way to do it. It really isn't. I mean, it's just I've been on 1 hour PDs and I've been on 6 hour PDs, and yeah, the 6 hour PD, you're just like, what's going on? What else is happening here? Other things are getting done on the computer in front of you, and it's just, it's just you get tuned out, and it's like our standards that we've just been given. It's like, okay, we have this, we have this, we have this, and we have to give it. And some of the instruction that you're talking about is like, yeah, we're going to front load this. We're going to do YouTubes. We're going to do this, some on-demand learning, and it's going to help. But again, like you said, you're offering recommendations. No one has the perfect answer. And that's the one thing I think, like right now, no one has the perfect answer. We're just trying everything. And at least now coming into this fall season, it seems like us as educators, PD, everything else, there's more structure going in this time. Mm-hmm. And it's not like we're just being thrown into the fire. I think it's just.
Well, we're also facing the fact that, everyone got a free pass for fourth quarter. We didn't count really grades, just learn, make sure they're engaged and stuff like that. Now, all of a sudden, if you think from the kids' perspective, okay, guys, now it counts. And the kids are like, what do you mean? I mean, I have not lived that kind of life throughout this thing. Now you're telling me it counts. We really need to be sensitive to the kids. We have a lot of kids. We have kindergartners who are first time in school experiencing it like this. We have middle kids going into middle school for the first time experience like this. I have a 9th grader and a senior who are both distraught because they're starting high school like this. And my daughter's worried, is she ending high school like this? This is really our opportunity to really make learning engaging and not only just rigorous, but joyful. And when I say rigor, I mean, it's not just giving them more stuff to do or more stuff to learn. It's going deeper. What is not only the level of thinking, but the depth and extent we can have the kids understand using knowledge. Be creative. That is the thing. Be creative and take care of yourself. And put it on the students, man. If you're working too hard to teach and they're not working hard enough to learn, something's wrong. That's a flip. And this is the opportunity. I can just basically give an assignment right now. I can say to you right now, all right, so how did Edgar Allan Poe create an entire genre of literary fiction? What if I told you that Edgar Allan Poe was the first person who ever wrote a detective mystery story? And what if I told you that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle even admitted that he based Sherlock Holmes on a character that Edgar Allan Poe created 50 years before named C. Auguste Dupin? Okay, guys, here's the deal. I want you to go find my credible sources. I want you to go basically find out whether I'm correct or incorrect. I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes. Log out. Log back in. What do you got? Okay. And then you say, okay, now we're going to read Words in Rue Morgue. Okay. And I'm going to go into a little bit about the motif styles of a detective mystery story. My question to you is this, is that how is this the first detective mystery story? And why does Edgar Allan Poe call this a tale of ratiocination? You guys need to look up what a tale of ratiocination is. And that's why I know more high school, but let me give you more of a middle school one, okay? Next generation science standards. One of the standards say, analyze, interpret data on natural hazards to forecast future catastrophic events and inform the development of technologies that mitigate their effects. That's the actual standard. Amazing how I memorized it.
That's impressive.
Well, then I would say to you, basically, I'm going to put how could you in front of that. So I'm going to say, okay, guys, here's your STEM project. How could you analyze, interpret data on natural hazards to forecast future catastrophic events and inform the technologies to mitigate their effects? Okay, what's the first thing you need to know and understand? Okay, what's a natural hazard? You gave me one, blizzard. Okay, why is it a natural hazard? Because it's done by nature. It's a force of nature. Would you like to do that for your project? Yes. Okay, good. Give me another one, hurricanes. Okay, is hurricanes a natural hazard? Yes. Why? Because it's a force of nature. Would you like to do that for your project? Yes. Can I do that also, Mr. Francis? Sure. Can I work with Eric over here? If Eric lets you, okay, sure. See what I mean? So now I'm showing flexibility. Someone says floods. Is that natural, man-made, or both? You may have to go look up some evidence for that for me. You see how I keep on turning it over to the kids? Okay. You always got to turn it over to the kids. And, even with the littles, the thing is is that their minds, they are such creative thinkers and such critical thinkers. We just got to teach them how to express it with literacy and numeracy. My wife is a first grade teacher, and I love telling this story. She did a comparison, and they had to give their opinion. And she asked them, would you rather be a whale or a giraffe? And one of her first grade boys said, I'd rather be a whale because if I was a giraffe, I might get caught in Carol Baskin's zoo. from Tiger King. And I'm like, yes, man, that is creative. And then one of my other friends told me this story about, how they were reading this story about a zoo. And then someone said, does anyone have any questions about a zoo? And they said, how can we stop the monkeys from peeing on all the people? And I'm like, that's an awesome first grade project, man. It was a first grade thing. And just sitting there going, wow, because here's the thing. What if we got our lessons from the kids? What if we asked them, okay, what is it you want to learn? And that's when, you talk about what advice I would give, not advice, recommendation. I would say, share your love for what you're learning. Don't shove it down their throat. Okay. We love what we teach because we had some teacher or someone who influenced us to go beyond the textbook or beyond the standards, who really made a challenge. Mine was a history teacher who used to open up the textbook and he'd say, okay, according to the textbook, this, he'd shut it and go, now here's the real story about what happened. And he'd tell us all this stuff. Or, that teacher made you say, okay, hey, here's this, Shakespearean play. I want you now to go read this Shakespearean play. And I want you to read this, and think about it. They didn't teach us so much what we had to learn. I mean, we learned about Shakespearean tragic hero. And then we learned about how Brutus and Macbeth are Shakespearean tragic hero. And then it compared. That's what I did in my lessons. And I used to teach it where I said, okay, how are Brutus, Macbeth, and Anakin Skywalker examples of Shakespearean tragic hero? And what are the similarities in their temptation, their fall from grace, their fate, and also their wives? And my kids realized this is the same story. One's told during the time of Caesar, one's told in the Scottish Empire, and the other one's told in space. And that's that kind of, and we can do that. We can do that. So if you're also looking, you ask me what kind of recommendation I would give. I'm trying to be as encouraging as possible because, yeah, we know this can suck. Okay. But what can we do? Because if we're not excited about it, then our kids are not going to be excited about it.
Again, coming off the title of the chapter, the joy of rigorous learning, just having that joy, and not just to be happy to be done, but happy to see what you accomplished, happy to see what you're putting into it. So looking at the time, man, I feel we can go for another hour or two if we could. Yeah. On social and stuff, you want to put your socials out there so people can follow you and see what else you're doing?
Sure. My Twitter handle is @Maverick, Maverik, no C's in Maverick, Maverik, EDU12. I don't really do Facebook with or Instagram. I just do more so Twitter. But if you want to go to my website and learn more about depth of knowledge or good questioning, go to www.maverick, Maverik, education.com. Also, in response to this pandemic, I did put this actually on YouTube. I started making this thing called 60-second PDs, and they're a little more than 60 seconds. But I have a few topics on there about what exactly is depth of knowledge. I'm not talking. There's music, there's images, and you just see the images, and it gets you to think, and it stimulates your thinking. And this might be a way also, if you want to look at teaching online, how could you do that with your kids? Because I didn't want to sit there and be a talking head. Like, as you can see, I could be. But I just wanted to put an image out there and whet their appetite and get you thinking. So if you go on YouTube and you look up 60-second PD, you will see the different videos I have on there. I have one about what exactly is depth of knowledge. Now, that's a good question, both based on my books. I have one about deconstructing standards. I have one about basically doing a thing called Inquiring Minds, which is an inquiry process. And it's just 60 seconds. You just play it, you watch it for 60 seconds, you can rewind it, you can look at it, you can look at the image. And again, that's on YouTube. And you can contact me if you're curious about any of this at Erik, ERIK, at Maverick, MAVERIK, education.com.
And there's a little blurb for you. That's where you can kind of find and you can find Mr. Francis. And I'm guessing Maverick Education is Top Gun inspired. Am I saying
totally.
that?
Totally. Dude, I mean, seriously, I have people who say to me, and this is just that I didn't have this planned, but now you just asked the question. I have people who forget my name's Eric. They call me Maverick, and I go like this.
Nice.
You know, I mean, that's that's, you know, and that's, you know, being creative with it. I mean, you know, it's a play off my name. My daughter's name's Madison Ava and Amanda. You know, like my book, Top Gun Maverick, got pushed ahead to next year.
How mad were you? I was pissed.
Oh, I was pissed. Oh my God. So here's my thought. Okay. So Disney just announced that Mulan's going to be pay-per-view. It's going to be video on demand, and it'll offer $29.99, and it just clarified that, you know, you'll be able to have it if you buy it, if you have Disney Plus. And, you know, yeah, it's expensive, but think about how much it would cost for you to take your whole family out to go see Mulan after, you know, the ticket and the parking and you know, getting the popcorn and stuff like that.
It's like $50.
Yeah, so you're actually getting it for a deal. So I'm hoping that this is going to inspire stuff, because, and that's what we got to do in terms of, you know, thinking creatively. So when this thing first started, I mean, I didn't understand why, you know, you got these big studios that, you know, you have HBO Max, which is owned by, you know, the same company as Warner Brothers. You got Disney Plus, Peacock, which is through Universal, that new NBC thing. Right. And they just struck a deal actually with AMC Studios. And, you know, you got Paramount. You just make an app, and the theater owners balk at it. Then what the theater owners could do is basically, what if you did it through our app? I mean, you can't really like have a movie shown exclusively at a theater. There's a law about that. That's from the 1920s and 30s. That doesn't allow that. But you got to be creative, and that's the thing about it. And that's actually what the wonderful, joyous, rigorous thing about this is. How could we be creative about what it is that we can do right now? And when this whole thing started, people were like, oh my gosh, what we're going to do? I said, I don't know, man, but this is an awesome time because I'm not bound by research. I can throw it at the wall, and if it stays, it's paint. If it doesn't, well, it's something else, and I'll throw something back at it again. You know, and we got to think creatively about it. We can't just go back to the way it was. We're not. And that's with everything. And what I'm really hoping about this is that whoever, you know, becomes in a position of power is going to look at the way we assess our kids, because we have not been assessing them to measure student learning. We've been assessing them to hold schools accountable and actually punishing schools for things that are out of our control. And we're not using assessment to inform us about behaviors and needs. We're using assessment to hold people accountable. And we really need to look at that. We really need to look at how we're doing assessment. I hope this whole thing changes that. I hope this whole thing changes education. I hope this makes it something more and greater, not better, but greater. And that's, yeah.
I've always said that, you know, this year is either going to be the most stressful year of the life, or stressful year of an educator's life, or the greatest, because it's that opportunity to make that change and to really put your foot out there and really, you know, make your mark. Because it's going to be one of those things. No one knows the right answer. And that's what this whole book is all about. No one knows the right answer. We just want to ask them questions.
Well, all the answers are right. We just got to basically defend, explain, justify them. We don't know the correct answer, but I think also the attitude has to be is, I hate this saying, it's, you know, it is what it is. I hate that saying, because that basically, when you say that, I feel like you're surrendering. You know, you're surrendering to the situation. Mm-hmm. It is what you make of it. I mean, my professional development and what I provide has pretty much it's bottomed out because of this whole thing. I mean, I'd be coming to your school this year. I'd be doing a bigger session, and I'm consistently trying to figure out where do I fit? What's my piece in this big puzzle? You know, and there's certain people who are like, oh, wow, you know, hey, I'm a tech person. I can jump on this. Or there's people who are focusing on SEL and equity, and they're jumping on this. And I'm always trying to figure out, okay, now how, with my wheelhouse, where do I fit in this puzzle? Because I want to serve and I want to help. And that's something that, you know, we're all doing it. But if I just say it is what it is, I'm surrendering to it. And if I say it is what I make of it, and some days it's not a good day, and some days it's like, okay, you know, I'm going to make this be what it is, you know, and that's I think that's the thing, is that we have to go into this with, yeah, you know, this isn't great. We know it's not great, but how could we make it great?
Definitely. And with that, I think that's a great ending point, man. Definitely. With everyone out there, Chapter 12 contributor Erik Francis, The Joy of Rigorous Learning. This is our book, guys. Recovery Mode, pushboundconsulting.com. definitely click on it. It is completely free, the best price out there right now. You get it on ebook right now. We're talking about hardbound sometime in the future. We don't know yet for all the paper lovers out there, but definitely, Erik, completely appreciative, brother. Thank you so much for your time. Definitely a great learning experience for any educator out there for depth of knowledge and just what to do for this upcoming season and everything else. So please be well. Be well and stuff, and definitely we'll talk soon.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you.